deposits, you would have put in $40,000. And if that is compounding, growing interest on interest, profits on profits at 10%, in 40 years at your retirement age, you'd have $1.2 million. However, in this scenario, let's say you put in nothing for the first 10 years, but then each of the next 30 years, you're putting away $4,000. You would have had a deposit amount of $120,000, so that's $80,000 more, and you only would have had $723,000 because you lost the compounding effect on that first 10 years. So you want to think about getting your dollars to work sooner than later. Think about your dollars as your employees working for you 24/7, right? Because when you can start living off your investments, you are truly financially free. Now, I just came across this study not too long ago, and this accountant, financial planner, who is on the speaking circuit and publishes in a lot of magazines, had done a study over 4 years to see how long it takes to become a self-made millionaire. You got an idea of how many years that takes? Want to take a guess? Rachel, take a guess. What's that? 25? That's close. That's close. It's actually 32 years. So while we hear about the folks at Google or some internet company becoming a billionaire or multimillionaires overnight, the truth of the matter is only 1% of the people become a self-made millionaire by the age of 40. And by the way, a third of the people that became a millionaire came from homes where the income was $35,000 a year with basically zero net worth, okay? And the remainder came from middle-class folks, okay? So this doesn't matter where you come from, right? It's all possible. And so if we focus here and add up these three, this is 80%. So we could say that 80% of the self-made millionaires, it happens after the age of 50. So my point is, this is just going to take time. But here, you all have time. And when the more time you have, the less stress you need to have to put away to save for retirement. I see a lot of people that say, well, I got to pay off my school loans and my car loan, and then, I'm probably going to get married, and then there's the wedding, and then there's the kids and the house, and there's all these things. I'm not even going to have a chance to come up for air until I'm in my mid-40s. And that happens a lot. But there's choices in all of those. What kind of car are you going to drive? What kind of house or apartment are you going to live in? What kind of clothes are you going to wear during that time? You see a lot of times immigrants coming from other parts of the world into this country, and they live in a very frugal way. And they oftentimes end up accumulating a lot of money because they just didn't have a lot of wants. They just took care of their basic needs. So we now know about compounding, and we know about time. Now, part 3 is we have to earn that reasonable rate of return, that 8% return, or something along that lines. And the way you do that is you can invest in stocks, bonds, real estate. We all know that stocks are partial ownership's interest in a business. So if you want to be a partner with Apple, you can buy some shares of Apple or buy shares of Disney, and you are actually a part owner of that business. And every quarter, those businesses, and most quarters, make profits, and they share those profits with you in the form of a dividend. So you're going to get these quarterly payments. And over time, there's enough demand for those shares that the stock price goes up, and so your stock can appreciate. So you can make money from the appreciation of the stock price, as well as the sharing of the profits, which they call dividends. Now, small stocks for 89 years have averaged about 12%, and large stocks like Disney and IBM and Microsoft, they've averaged about 10%. You can also invest in bonds. Bonds are basically a way to lend people money. The government needs to fund its debt. You can buy government bonds. They go anywhere from a few months to 30 years. But corporations sometimes would rather go to the public and issue a bond versus go to a bank to get a loan. But the difference between a stock and a bond is a stock means you're a part owner in the business, and a bond means you're just lending them money. Okay? So bonds have averaged 5 or 6% over 89 years. Real estate, which usually requires borrowed money to make a good profit. If you pay cash for real estate, most of the time the return isn't quite as good, but real estate historically has averaged 5 to 6%. But whether you're in stocks or bonds or real estate, I think over this, not in any one year, but over the course of time, an 8% return is reasonable to expect. But you will see here on this chart that there are some years where it goes down or it goes sideways, and in these years, it can be very painful. But over time, it goes up. Now, when you turn on the news, it sounds like the world is coming to an end, okay? But it's not. It's just life. Now, there's plenty of crazy people in the world, but what I want to tell you is that your future is every bit as bright as the futures of the people that came before you. And look at the things we've had over the last 40 years. 2 terrorist attacks recently in San Bernardino. We had 9/11. This country has had 28 wars, military campaigns, or conflicts. This country is always fighting somebody, all right? We've had 4 Republican presidents over 24 years. We've had 3 Democratic presidents over 20 years. We've had 6 recessions. A recession is when you have at least 6 months in a row where the economy is slowing down. Sometimes it lasts longer, sometimes it's very deep. We've had 6 countries where their currency became worthless. We just saw this in Greece over the last couple of years. In the late 90s, the Russian currency, it was worth nothing. You couldn't buy anything around the world with it. They had to go to a barter system. We saw this also in the late 90s in Asia, a lot of the Asian countries, and in the 80s, a lot of South America, Mexico, their country's currencies just were worth nothing. We've had 25 major public companies go bankrupt since 1980, and 35 notable natural disasters, the hurricanes and the floods and the earthquakes, things that really caused a lot of financial and personal issues. But through it all, from an investment perspective, they tended to go up over time. And so we have to have the faith that that will continue. So we know we got to have compounding. We want to take advantage of the time, and we can get some reasonable rates of return. That's really the subject of a whole nother lecture. I just wanted to show you that it's possible, but that's what makes the secret for financial success. I just learned how to animate that. Now, here's a follow-up question, though. So how much will you need to feel financially successful for you to believe that you can retire? And this is a very personal number. There's no right or wrong answer. Well, here I apply a very simple rule of thumb. You take the income that you think you need to retire with and divide it by 4%, and it's going to tell you the lump sum that you need to have in order to generate this income and never touch the lump sum. So in this example, I take $50,000. I divide it by 0.04. It tells me I need $1,250,000. Now, I take that $1,250,000, I buy some stocks, some bonds, some real estate. I get this nice little basket, and it's going to generate enough income, enough growth to give me at least 4%. And so I can just take the growth per year out of that account, that $50,000, and never touch this $1,200,000. You want $100,000? Fine, divide it by 0.04, then you need $2.5 million. So this right now can already tell you how much you're going to need to save over your career in order to get that kind of income. Now, to be fair, money today is not going to buy the same that it will into the future. Inflation, historically, for the last 40 years has averaged about 3.25%. Okay? So, if we take this 4% and even add another 4% for inflation, that's where I get back to that 8% return I've been talking about. This is basically, this will have the same purchasing power 40 years from now that it does today if you're earning 8% because it's covering the inflation. Now, in my business, I've had some clients that say, well, listen, Scott, when I'm no longer on earth, I can't take the money with me and I want to spend it. One guy even said, I want my last check to bounce. He wanted to leave nothing to nobody, right? So, again, it's all personal decisions. So, we run an exercise that says, okay, let's say we're all retired now, we're at 65. And actuarially, everybody in this room, life expectancy, according to the government, is going to be 89.5 years old. But let's give you all the benefit of the doubt and take you out to 90 years, 95 years of age, so we get around 30 years. So the question is, if I'm growing the money at 4%, how much could I pull out dipping into this pool of money per year in addition to the income before it goes to zero at the end of 30 years? So at the end of 30 years, it's going to be zero. So here I'm just pulling out the interest, the growth, and in here I'm pulling out the principal as well. So at this level, I could pull out $72,000 if I didn't mind dipping into some of this. And if I never wanted to touch it, I'd have 50. So there's a lot of variables and time that would go into this, but this can kind of give you a range of what you could look forward to having in a retirement. So to review this part of the program, it's you want to compound your interest and returns. Remember, interest on interest, growth on profits, growing on profits. You have to think about every dollar you spend and what it could be worth into the future. You have to know that time is your friend. Start saving and investing today. You want to maximize your retirement accounts and take advantage of the tax-free growth that the government allows you to take. You want to earn these reasonable rates of return. Set this financial goal for yourself of what you think you're going to need or want, and then enjoy your financial success. I just love that. Now, once you are working, one of the most important things to understand about money, we got about 10 more minutes here, so bear with me, is that it's not as important what you make, but it's what you save, okay? And so by that, we have to understand this concept of living within your means. And so, we talk about this in a lot of studies and reports that I've read. We talked about this World War II generation. I guess they would be your greater grandparents probably back then, right? And so they built the roads and the telephone poles, and they built the infrastructure of this country. These folks didn't have credit cards. They had layaway. They didn't take merchandise until they had paid for it. Then they had their kids, the baby boomers, that said, well, we don't want to wait. They came up with credit cards. We'll take it now and pay you later. But the problem with that is that then everybody starts to get things now and borrow and extend themselves, and everybody has to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak, and it causes a lot of time people to live above their means, and it gets people in trouble. But if you can keep your ego in check and focus on what's really important and live within your means, you can see how easy it is for you to retire a millionaire, or be financially independent, right? So one, you guys want to have a budget. You want to plan. You'll know what your income is. You want to start thinking about what your expenses are and make sure at the end of the day that your income is more than your expenses. I gave this exercise to a couple that had $1.5 million, and one person no longer had a job, and so they were kind of going through their savings at a pace that I brought to their attention was not good. And so I said, I gave them this budget, and they came back and their expenses were still more than the income. I even color coded. Income is green, expenses red, right? And I said, you didn't get the exercise. You have to cut your expenses so that you have more income than expenses, or get more income. It's one or the other, right? So have a budget, because it's going to help you to understand where you're spending your money, and it's going to help you to avoid wasteful spending. So one of the best places to go, you can go for free actually, mint.com. It's one of the best places online, and you can log in your credit card and your bank statements, and it's good stuff. And even as a college student, you can plan the budget that you have and then just grow with that. Or spend 50 or 70 bucks, whatever it is, and buy Quicken. That's another good one to use. So indulge me with the numbers I'm using. I just want to show an example of living within your means. Let's say we have a doctor that earns $200 and a teacher that earns $100, and they both have needs for food and shelter and transportation of $50 each. So the doctor has a chance to save $150 and the teacher can save $50. But the doctor, being the doctor, would like a nicer car, bigger house, more expensive vacations. The teacher is living within her means. At the end of the day, the doctor has saved nothing, the The teacher now has a net worth of $50. So who's actually richer? And I can tell you that I gave a seminar to 75 dentists in Austin. They were all in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. And it was 75. Out of the 75, there were only 5 that had $1 million. The rest of them had $100,000 to $300,000. Now, this is after working 20, 30 years in a career where they're making $300,000 and $400,000 a year. They didn't save anything. They're driving leased cars, leased homes. They're getting their kids expensive cars, and they're just not living within their means. And at the end of the day, you know, this is the kind of thing that happens. So, okay, so that's it, living within your means. So the next item, just to be aware of, is you want to think in terms of after-tax dollars. So let's say I'm working at Starbucks for $10 an hour, work 8 hours, I earned $80. But I should not think about $80 because the government would like their fair share. So $18 goes to taxes. I really earned $61.88. So if I divide that by the 8 hours, I really earned $7.74 an hour. So when you're budgeting and you're thinking about what you can buy and what you can save, you want to think in terms of your after-tax dollars. The next thing I want to bring to your attention is it's really important to become a comparison shopper. Really be a good shopper, because this is some of the easiest ways to be able to get that extra money to put away for your future retirement. So I went on the internet, I looked up some blue jeans. They're the same size, same fabric. Sometimes the stitching was a little different, and sometimes the label was different. But at Target, these cost $22. At Old Navy and American Eagle, they were $30. JCPenney, it was at $45. Kohl's, $54. Macy's and Gap, $58 and $59. Tommy Bahama, that place smells good, $98. Lucky Brand, $99. And Nordstrom's, $198. So a little comparison shopping is going to go a long way. Now, think about what it takes with your how many hours it takes with your after-tax dollars to be able to afford this. So we just said, I really made $7.74 an hour working at Starbucks. So it would take me 2.9 hours of work to be able, before I could buy them at Target. It would take me 7 hours before I could buy it at Kohl's. You know, a day and a half of work to buy them at these two stores, and basically more than 3 days to buy these pair of jeans at Nordstrom's. So time is valuable. Be a comparison shopper. Be smart about it. Now, this was one of my favorite ones, comparison food shopping. So I looked up 7 items at Whole Foods, H-E-B, and Costco. You've heard of all these, right? Okay. So a dozen eggs, $2.99 at Whole Foods, $3.09 at H-E-B, $1.56 at Costco. Milk, this was the one time where Whole Foods was a little cheaper. Bread, same size bread, $4 at Whole Foods, $3 at Costco. Raisin Bran, the same Raisin Bran, $5.88 at Whole Foods, $3 at Costco. 4 Gala apples, $4.60 at Whole Foods, $2.80 at Costco. 1 pound of ground turkey, $5.99 at Whole Foods, $2.69 at Costco. And toothpaste, $7.73 at Whole Foods. Don't shop there for toothpaste. Versus Costco. So out of this little basket, $36.98 at Whole Foods, $27 at H-E-B, and $20 at Costco. So by shopping at Costco, I don't work there. I have no ownership interest in Costco. I'm just saying, if I shopped there for these items, I would have saved $16.42 versus going to Whole Foods, and $6.64 over H-E-B. If I do that times 52 weeks, I'd save $854 a year over this store, $345 here. If I did that over the 40 years getting to retirement, I would have saved $34,000 versus shopping at Whole Foods, and $13,000 over H-E-B. And if I applied that compounding growth part of it at 10%, that would come out to, I would have spent $377,000 more at Whole Foods and $152,000 more than H-E-B. So be a smart shopper. Every dollar truly counts. Now, why do people choose to pay more? Convenience. Well, Okay, but maybe you can budget your time differently so you know you can go to a few different places to get things that are cheaper. Sometimes people just have a fun or cool shopping experience at one store over another. Some people like to wear labels. Some people are unaware that an item is cheaper somewhere else. Some people just don't care. So, does all this comparison shopping and saving and all this stuff make a difference in your life? Well, I read a story about this lady. Her name is Mary Esame. She was a nurse. She wore secondhand clothes, wore old shoes. And I'm not suggesting that you live like this, but I want to show you the example. She never bought anything she really didn't need. She saved every penny. She was a very quiet woman. Didn't obviously have a lot of friends, but when she died, she had saved over $10 million, which she ended up giving away to charity. So that's what she did on a nurse's salary because she just saved a lot. And there was another lady named Roberta Langtree who was a school teacher, and she had saved almost $4 million by the time she was 89. So because she kept to her budget, didn't have a lot of wants, and she spent her money wisely, and so that's what can be done. So everybody in here can become a millionaire if you just think about it this way. So anyway, that's my presentation. So good luck with all this. Any questions? Yes?
As a college student, you may have not working, so how do you start the retirement account?
So in order to start an actual IRA, you need to show some earned income, meaning a W-2 income or from a 1099 income. So if you don't have that, I would at least just open up an individual account at the bank or brokerage firm, a Charles Schwab, a Fidelity Investments, TD Ameritrade, Bank of America, Wells Fargo. They all have investment divisions. And you can go online actually and open up an individual account, and you can just start on a monthly basis putting a little bit of money into an S&P 500 index. So, it's not particularly cheap at the moment, but if you're just putting in a little bit each month, some months it's more expensive, some months it's cheaper, but if you just did it over a lifetime, you're probably going to average, the S&P has averaged 9 to 10% for 80 years. So even if the next 40 years it's a little less, it's still going to be, 7, 8, 9%. So that would be a great way to start. But once you do start earning some income, first you want to see if your employer has a retirement account, because what that will do is when you put money into your employer's retirement account, you don't pay tax on that money. Because what it does is it takes your gross income, and then if any money that goes into your retirement account gets excluded from what they're going to take out for taxes. And then when you eventually leave that employer, if you do, you can roll that money over into one of these individual retirement accounts, and that's just called an IRA rollover. And it's a conduit, it remains in its tax-deferred status. So some companies don't offer retirement plans, and so if that's the case, you can just start up an individual IRA account. But for those kind of questions, you're either welcome to call me, and I'm happy to help you at any time. No cost, just happy to help. And or you can call a Charles Schwab or Fidelity Investments or TD Ameritrade, and the people at the front desk can, or their call centers on this part can really guide you into the right forms to fill out. But I would just start putting that money away. Even if you get money from your family for the holidays or however you get some extra money, just start putting it away. And then at the end of the year,